you are led to believe that the Queen is the only sovereign. This is wrong. The Queen is given authority through the coronation oath. Her oath was a binding contract between the Crown and the people of this nation. This means that we, the people, gave her her sovereignty. And as everyone knows, you can't give away something you do not possess yourself. That means that each and every one of us is sovereign. We each have supreme, independent authority over our own flesh and blood human body. The problem is, we have forgotten we are powerful. We have forgotten that we belong to and are part of one of the most amazing species that to our knowledge has ever existed.
When you were born, your parents were fooled into thinking that they needed to register your birth and get a birth certificate for you. So they applied for a birth certificate, not understanding what would happen when they did. Well then, what did happen? Well, according to local authority, 1, they lost ownership of their baby, which is you, and 2, they allowed a strawman to be created. This is not something which they can be blamed for, as nobody told them it would or even could happen, nor did anybody tell them that what a strawman is or how it can be used against their baby. In actual fact, the registration is a contract, and in reality, it is null and void because there was not full disclosure by the local authority, nor was there intent to contract on the part of the parents. A strawman is a fictitious legal entity created with the hope that as the child grows up, he'll be fooled into believing that he is actually the strawman, which he most definitely is not, and pay all sorts of imaginary costs and liabilities which get attached to the strawman by con artists. Well, the mechanism involves an unnecessary birth certificate, which the parents imagine is about and belongs to their baby, neither of which is actually true. If the baby has been named James and the family name is Martin, then you would expect the birth certificate to have the name James Martin written on it. If that is what is written on it, then all is well, and it is a genuine birth certificate. However, if any other name is there, then the document is not a birth certificate, but instead is the creation of a straw man masquerading as James Martin. The alternative entries might be any of the following examples: James Martin in capitals, Mr. James Martin, Martin, Mr. James, or anything else which is not exactly James Martin, and nothing else, in order to charge the straw man imaginary costs, penalties, and fool the human James Martin into paying those amounts. These imaginary charges include income tax, council tax, inheritance tax, capital gains tax, road tax, import tax, value-added tax, fuel levy, loan interest, bank charges, and anything else that full-time professionals pick up and are confident that you will notice, you will never agree to pay, and don't need to pay. Now, legalese is a secret language with the sole intention of stopping you believing that what they are saying to you has nothing to do with the normal meaning in English language. Their purpose is to cheat and to rob you. For example, they will say to you, "Do you understand?" In English that means, "Do you comprehend what I'm saying to you?" And the automatic response will be yes, meaning I do comprehend what you're saying to me. But these sneaky underhand people change the meaning in legalese to mean, "Do you stand under me?" Meaning, do you grant me authority over you, so that you have to obey whatever I tell you to do? What makes it even worse is the fact that they will never tell you that they have switched from English to legalese, and if that is not dishonest, underhand, and unscrupulous, then I don't know what is. If you answer the question believing that English is being spoken, then they pretend that you are contracting them with them to become subordinate to them. Whether or not that is actually true is debatable, because that is effectively a verbal contract between you and them, and for any contract to be valid, it has to be full and open disclosure of all terms of the contract, and then unreserved acceptance by both parties, and in these cases, that is most definitely not occurred. All humans born equal, with complete freedom, choice and action. If you live in the same place as a lot of other people, then there are a few restrictions which have grown up by common consent over time. These restrictions are for your protection and the protection of the other people that you need. These These restrictions are called the law, or more accurately, common law, and they are few in number and very easy to understand. They are: you must not injure or kill anyone. You must not steal or damage things owned by somebody else. You must be honest in your dealings and not swindle anyone. They are the only limitations on you. And if you don't want to abide by them, then you need to go to some isolated place and stay away from other people. Many people think that there are hundreds of other laws, which they have to keep, and new ones every day. That is not so. There's other things that are called statutes, and keeping them is optional for you, the human, but they are not optional for the fiction of Strawman. And that is why the people who benefit from those things want to persuade you to represent your Strawman, and so become subject to all of their invented restrictions and charges. Were you ever told that these things are optional? If you agree to represent your Strawman, then these things become binding on you. These are some of the statutes which politicians keep inventing in order to make you poor, make them and their friends rich, and keep you in a position where you have to do everything they say, no matter how much that harms you, and does away with your natural rights and freedoms. But, says somebody, we elect a government to represent us, so we have to do what they say. After all, they have our best interests at heart, don't they? Well, that's a nice thought, but is it actually true? No. You think that you elect politicians to represent you in your government, but that is not what you actually do. That is part of a very carefully fostered illusion intended to keep you in your place and keep most of your earnings away. Typically 80% of all you earn. Part of the secret is that what is supposed to be your government is actually a privately owned, for-profit company. All that you do when voting is help choose the serving officers inside that company. It will never make the slightest difference to what happens in the future, as the company policy and actions are controlled by the owners of the company, and they are not influenced in any way whatsoever by what you want. They want you to be so burdened down with paying them money, working so hard and so long, that you don't have time, money or energy to stop and think about what is happening to you and your family. They are desperate to stop you from just walking away from their scam, so they make every effort to connect you with the fiction, which is your Strawman, because fictitious entities like commercial companies can't have any dealing with a real man or real woman. They can only deal with another fiction like your Strawman, and it is essential that they fool you into believing that you have to act on behalf of your Strawman, which you don't.